The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Juliana Susla, and on behalf of ISQua, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar. Our presenter today is Phil Hassan, and he will be speaking on creating high-performance healthcare organizations through building effective teams. We are delighted to have Phil with us today, especially because he is past president of International Society for Quality in Healthcare. Phil Hassan is presently Health Innovator in Residence, Center for Health Innovation and Leadership, Richard School of Business, Western University. Philip is also a former board chair and president of the Canadian Network for International Surgery and has had a distinguished career in health service management and policy. He has most recently served as the first Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Patient Safety Institute. Just to remind you that Phil's presentation will last approximately 45 minutes, and we will leave 10-15 minutes for any questions that you may have at the end. Over to you now, Phil, whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And to everybody, good morning and or good afternoon and good evening, wherever you might be. Delighted to be here and delighted to be part of this series of webinars. My goal here is to hopefully give you lots of information, and I shared with you a little bit about my past, not because of anything other than I wanted you to know that I'm going to be drawing from these experiences because in my life I believe that team building has become extremely important and vital, not just nominally but profoundly, so that people can perform at a higher level and be able to accelerate the kinds of changes that are necessary. And because there is so much work that needs to be done where it's interdisciplinary and depending on people from a wide range of expertise.
Phil, if you just go back to your presentation. Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
Okay. So, what are the session's purpose? So first of all, it is really to increase your knowledge about team building and the stages of development. So not only is it sort of a notional idea, but there are some fundamental methodology that I will try and give to you. Some of it will look like I'm coming at it from different angles and might look like there's overlap, and in fact there is. The goal here is to give you really deeper understanding of how you go about this, and that you can take these tools. I'll try to also give you some references along the way, but can further give you enhanced references later on or after this this particular webinar is over. I want you to understand about the constructs of teams and the challenges of making them effective, and to recognize that effective teams are essential for improving quality and service and safety. Providing better care to patients and families is really what it's all about. That's the role that we as senior people or mid-career leaders need. And so if you are a mid-career leader and not a senior leader, I think that you're going to find that these will be helpful, and also as you evolve in your career, that building teams at every level and across your organization and with others from other organizations, and I'll describe a little of that a little later. So what is team building? Well, it is a philosophy. And it's important we agree on what team building is. It has a lot to do with culture of an organization. Some organizations, the cultures are conducive to team building, and it has to do with the nature of the leadership and the nature and way in which things get done. Some are still if I may, less mature, and still doing things what I call in the more of the top-down philosophy of management, and that as I as a leader tell people what to do. Well, I think those days are substantially over. There's still a role, of course, for leaders, significant roles, and I'll briefly talk about that. We need to, as a culture, I look at respect for diverse input, how we do our work, how we care for the patients, how we care for each other, and leaders enthusiastically engaging staff in how to get things done. So it is about individual performance within groups, within teams, and they are interdependent upon each other. So the goals of developing teams are both to develop the individual as a member of the team, and of course the team to be a high performing so they get the kind of results and are able to be effective. So I want to have you understand how teams currently work, or how they work, and how to improve the way teams work together in the future, and how to put them together, in fact, and how to achieve better results. So to improve the team's ability to collaborate is probably one of the keys, and communications, you will thematically hear that no matter where you are in your role within an organization, improving communications is a hallmark of what good teams do, both within the team and with other teams or other people who are adjacent to the teams to get the work together. And of course, as I said already, increase the quality, safety, and efficiency of an organization in order to achieve the team's and organization's objectives. So there are challenges. First of all, depending on where you're coming from, and if, for example, I can remember in a situation where I was thrust into a senior role and there was not real trust. So the first thing you have to do is build the trust, and that may be the first objective even before you start talking about team building, or it is by inference the first step towards good team building. You've got to eliminate the culture of blame. Blame is often what we see in some organizations, where they're blaming others or each other for why things are not happening. They want to not hold it and own it themselves. And further, ineffective leadership. Leaders are a new special breed, and I will talk a little bit about that. And you've had some courses, and we've done some things at ISQua through the forums and other ways of what is good leadership, and I'll just briefly mention some of that a little later. And one of the other challenges that I have seen is because there's still this top-down oriented leadership, members often will agree too quickly on a solution because that's what the leader wants, rather than understanding that differences is often healthy to the organization to improve the quality of the results of the team's efforts. And some further challenges is that we are now much more into building teams that aren't just within disciplines, but across disciplines. And in fact, I will speak in the final phase of this, that we are talking about teams across organizations to really create the kind of care that patients and families and others require. There is more increased complexity in care delivery. Many of you are aware of that. To get to common goals is sometimes not as easy as it may seem. And further, there's competing agendas because there's lots of things that people are involved in, and frankly, sometimes they find it difficult to focus on this one. And finally, one that happens within the groups particularly is that you get people who have conflict or power struggles. So all of these things are occurring, and it requires a leader of who's very good at dealing with some of these issues, and we'll review some of that as we go along. So what is teamwork? Well, it's achieving a common purpose, and of course using individuals working together for that common purpose. And when we say common purpose, we mean a clear goal. That's one of the leader's responsibilities, will be to ensure that everyone is clear on what you're trying to accomplish, and that you're using individuals and they get to contribute their knowledge and expertise. That's why people become very committed to a group, and that they build relationships along the way. This becomes vital to making groups work. So specific objectives, they keep the best interests of the team in mind above the individual interests. And each member has an important role because they can contribute some unique things to the work that may be in front of you to achieve the results you're looking upon. So there will be, as you develop teams and are developing teams, the framework is that you agree on the principles and the processes such that decision-making and communication processes work well, and that people are able to communicate with each other, and it isn't grievous, or it isn't conflicting. There will be some tension in any groups, and we're going to go through the stages of the development, and you'll see that. What are the benefits of effective teamwork, of course, is first, increase problem-solving skills. So you're going to have to spend some time and effort educating and teaching people about problem-solving. Give the team the opportunity to find solutions to challenging problems and apply creative team solutions. Even in the forming stage, which they will have, you need to give them time to try things out before you go too far. Of course, I've mentioned communications, and it is really vital that communications, and you highlight the importance of communications among the members and with others as you move along. And finally, in this context, to build trust among people and ensure that the work is done effectively and efficiently, and that people are really committed to the results. Teamwork is the best countermeasure to fatigue, and that comes back to, if I may go back a slide, is the idea that teams, as they form, they can become energized. And I have found that more often than not, especially if you give them high degrees of ability to influence the results that you're looking for. So I would encourage you to realize that people can become not just another task, but actually, if you form the team correctly and give them the opportunity to develop, it will. So you do need to have some exercises. So this evolution of the team is to create some ways so they are able to become better at what they do with building team building exercises. The objectives are here to build healthy relationships and encourage people. Juliana, do you have this slide in front of you, or do you have a different one?
The slide that I have in front of me is the common team building exercise objectives.
Okay, okay, great. So increase problem-solving skills, to strengthen the communications, and build trust. As I say, that's what we have. And here's some exercises that I would like you to think about as we go along. Through organized time away from daily work, teams can focus on the following exercise: building relationships. So this is really vital to building trust, share things with each other. There actually are some formatted exercises that you can find either on the internet, or I can send those subsequently to ISQua But it really is important that you give people a chance to get to know each other, especially even if they do work together. Often there's very little time for them to really get to know each other. And there are things like introducing 3 facts of which others guess what and which one is a lie. These are just examples, but it's really to try to reopen the sense of conversation about the relationships you have to build the relationships, especially if you have teams who have not worked together. So problem-solving simulation is another one where I again refer to a company called Human Synergistics. We use them in Canada. They are on the website, and they do a variety of demonstrated importance of working together. One is the desert survival simulation, and there are others. But the idea is to give people ways of looking at how you solve problems, especially as a group of people who are becoming a team. Further, there is the idea that through the daily work, teams can focus on the following exercises: self-assessments. And this is often helpful. Many people, as they evolve their team and begin to become more comfortable with each other, begin to look at the Myers-Briggs tool to strengthen relationships and communications. And then you can better understand yourself and others and appreciate what differences there are between people and among people. There are 4 types that they talk about. I've listed them here. And those are just labels, if I may, but they help you understand there are differences, and with those differences you actually find that it's important to have differences at the table. And the final one that I want to mention is the group dynamics observations. And this is really about trust and involves engaging team members in a way that will induce trust between them. These are sometimes difficult exercises to implement, as they are varying degrees of trust between individuals and varying degrees of individual comfort trusting others in general. But the goal here is to get people to really trust each other. So that if I can go back, I know it seems like it's not related to the work that you want to get done, but if you don't have good trust among the group and good communications, if I were to find 2 key elements, it's those 2 key elements that will really make the difference. There are risks in team building, and you should be aware that team members may become cynical of the leader or the organization, or they may be that if there are no meaningful changes or improvements after a team building exercise. So the team building exercise are not about the changes in the organization or the work you do, but it is about trying to create meaningful change among the participants. And events may be viewed as a waste of time and lead to decreased motivation and productivity. So people are looking at that. The goal here is to have a lasting impact about trust and about communications. So fundamentals to team success really is about leadership, and I'm going to focus on that as we go along. It, of course, is about team members and their relationships. And if I may, this is a cornerstone. Wherever your organization is culturally, I know that the work I have done as I began to develop teams and gave extraordinary effort of training and education and development of teams, the culture began to change. And they're in my book, which is referenced at the back. I've given one example there of what we did at one organization, which showed dramatic change in the culture of the organization, which really improved its ability to work as teams and to begin to set the stages for improving quality and safety. So in leadership, really, these 5, I think some of you should be familiar with this. We've talked about it in some of the forums, and others have talked about it, and it continually is threaded with Kouzes and Posner's work on model the way what you do, inspire a shared vision. I can't say enough for that. I mean, you have to keep people aware of the goals and objectives and the vision that you and the organization may want to achieve. enable others to act. Well, that's the heart of this. Heart of team building is to get others to act and encourage the heart. You must ensure that you're encouraging people and finding positive things about their work as they evolve as a team, and then when they're working as a team, so that they feel strongly, they see the benefits to the patients and to the work that they're trying to achieve. So really, it's principle-centered leadership is what we're talking about in this regard. Well, it's assemble the right team, and sometimes you have to think about the members of the team, and it doesn't always be the ones who are all alike. In fact, that's not what you're looking for, but you need to make sure you have the skills and competencies at the table that you need to solve the problem. Then you need to know that what the team needs to accomplish, that is the goals, and believe in the team. You must believe that the team can actually do it. If you're just saying, well, I've got to go through this just because I want them to feel involved, it's not, they'll get a sense of that, and unfortunately will begin to subvert the objectives you have in team building. Always keep good standards of excellence. That doesn't mean you have to tell them, but I think you want to get them to ensure they understand that the way that we want to do this is to improve safety and quality, and this is done efficiently and effectively, and that you must invest in learning and development, be prepared to devote time and resources to it. I can't say enough of that. In one organization, again going back to the book I wrote about St. Joe's, one of the things we did, of course, is our goal was to educate and develop people so that they were in teams and they were in quality improvement teams. So we had to, our goal was to teach at least 80% of all the people in the organization through their leaders how to work as teams and how to use the tools of quality improvement. And some of you may be familiar with those. We won't go through that here. And it's to build trust and membership responsibility and accountability, you need to coach individuals and the team. That's the leader's role, one of the leader's roles in building the team. It is to help them develop themselves, help them understand the roles and responsibilities they have, and keep moving them along and allow for the kind of objectives you're looking for to unfold, and provide the team feedback on both the team performance and individual performance. So team leadership is give constructive feedback, and this is to be descriptive, and this is some examples of it. Positive feedback, I give you an example there, but it's not to just give, when they're trying to give them things that will help them become more positive about the work, to focus on behavior and the state of the facts, and be respectful and be an active listener. I mean, make sure they understand that you do understand what they're saying. You can see the critical feedback. I'll read this. I noticed that you were 30 minutes late for a clinic and you were delayed in seeing some people who were scheduled. We will not be able to get to the meeting at the end of the day. What do you suggest we do now? So it is being critical of something, but in a way that says we're not saying it in an extremely negative way, but more it's critical feedback to the individual and to the group as a whole. Team leadership, again, leaders recognize their approach need to be flexible and appropriate to the team stage of development. And we're going to be talking now about the stages of development. So that's where we're going to say that it doesn't start with all of a sudden there's a team and everything is great. Consider the implications to the delivery of quality and safety of care as I go through these, because really this is classical and is work that's been done by Tuckman, and it's not like it's old stuff. I know it's almost 40 plus years, but this stuff is still very important to understanding that teams typically go through stages of development. You know, you might say there are exceptions, but almost all of them go through this way, especially if they're unknown to each other, especially if they're cross-functional or a group that have not worked together, and certainly I've come across this more regularly than not. As we go through these, hopefully you'll understand. So forming is the first one. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of it, and then I'm going to talk about some practical approaches. So characteristics are hesitant to participate. So people sort of are there, but they're not really in that mood or mode. They aren't sure what to do. There's a bit of exchange of functional information and high dependence on the leader. So the leader, people are looking to the leader, and the key here is for the leader to come across as a person about helping them understand where we're going with the team and why we're building this team to gain greater success in the near term and in the long term. So the team formation, these are some of the 3 questions that often I found are asked. What is my role? And it often isn't always in those words, but you know, what am I going to do to make this team work well? How can I make a unique contribution? And what are the goals of the team? What are we trying to accomplish? Just, you know, it isn't just about getting together, and it is really about substantial work. And over time, as the team forms and ultimately achieves its end, you will see that it really can perform well. So what is the leader doing here is clarifying the roles and goals with them so they understand what the roles of some of the people are and what the goals are. Sometimes to get acquainted and orient members to the task and the people. So, you know, what are the objectives and what is the task that we're trying to do and who is it in the room? Sometimes it's pretty clear and people know each other. Sometimes it's not. Establish group agreements. And for those of you, it is how we're going to do this work. A little bit about, you know, the respect for each other's time. We're going to start on time. If we get a little off topic, we have a board over here. We can put those things on and we can come back to them. Just things that will help the group respect each other and certainly identify where the focus is and when it's not the focus, how we get back on track. And also, if they need additional information or resources, you sometimes have to go out and get that for them. So in the second stage is the storming, perhaps one of the more difficult stages, and this is when there's sometimes resistance, as I've mentioned before, and it can be very difficult because you know, some people just don't want to be there. There's conflict, people have not worked together or they have worked together and there are some issues that are unstated that need to be dealt with, and there's a polarization of issues and lack of unity in even getting people to agree on what the goal is. And finally, there may be challenges of the leader. I think you've got to be careful not to be defensive in all of this. It is difficult sometimes for people not to be reactive. You know, it's rising and becoming really capable as a leader to rise above this and help people understand that you're there to help them achieve the goal that will help team and ultimately patient care. So what are some of the practical approaches? Use active listening again. Be flexible and open-minded. Clarify the issues and shared views and feelings of respect. Do it all so that it's respectful. And help them understand that it's okay to have differences, and try to figure out ways of helping each of them become aware of those differences and be more accepting of those differences of each other. So you have to talk about those differences, not just the differences themselves, but why there's differences. And it's because of perspective. People come at it a different way. People come in with agendas that are about solving my problem, not the group's problem. So you've got to come back to why you're there as a group, for example. The third stage is norming. And norming is the development of the cohesive team. And over time, invariably, people begin to realize that they can work together. And even if they've had differences, if you've done it right and helped with the exercises and with the way the leader is behaving, not to increase the tension, you can do it, and you can develop some, we call it fun games, but the idea is to get them light a little bit once in a while, do things that are not always focused on that, just to break up the tension or break up the focus so people know that you're really wanting them to enjoy themselves as well. So cooperation and commitment becomes higher during this stage, and it does happen by, and it depends on how long. Some people say, well, we don't have time for this. Well, the goal here is that if you don't take the time now, you will continually and constantly be running into this as you begin to try to solve problems for this team and similar teams across your organization. And it's important that people understand the individual differences I've already mentioned, and that they accept them and work with them. The practical approaches is give and receive constructive feedback. In fact, one of the tools that you can teach is help people do that. In other words, how do they give and how do they receive constructive feedback, so they know that this is about helping them become better at what they do, not just simply to be critical of them. And so those are dynamics that become more helpful, and people become respectful in the way they do that. It is important not only for the leader but for the individual members to seek and give opinions and perspectives, so that they are capable of doing that, and not with holding on to and owning a particular position, but understanding that differences do help you eventually when you are working through a problem, as you begin looking at putting up on, for example, a board, a diversity of ideas on an issue and how you're going to solve it, that you can actually narrow it down, but you've got all the ideas up there. And again, focused on the problems and issues. Leaders and coaches are coaches and enable others to act. So it is about coaching the group. It is a change in leadership from directing, as some people have done in their lives, and to enabling others to come to agreement and understanding based on the new reality of why teams are important, because everything is across the organization. Is rarely just something within a very narrow band of a group of people, say a group of doctors or a group of nurses. They all work together with labs and radiology and housekeeping, and doctors with nurses, and subspecialists with subspecialists, et cetera, depending on your organization. So some of the approaches are shared vision and value. The leader needs to continually keep in front of people the shared vision. I think the values are extremely important. Come back to the respect for each other, and keeping people on focus on what the goal here is. That there'll be strong interdependence when they're forming, when they're performing, and able to solve disagreements positively. Further, as you can see, they have a high degree of autonomy, but I caution you that that's just in respect to the belief that they can solve this problem. They need to know that there will be other teams formed, that it isn't about just our loyalty to this team, but that they may have to work in bigger teams or different teams, and they need to figure out how these skills will be helpful to others as they go into those teams, and their goal will be to transfer, when necessary, by the way they behave, these new team skills as they move along. Use participative decision-making, apply problem-solving approaches, stay open to new ideas, and delegate. That's the leader. Delegate and support and encourage. So you really have some very important now dynamics of what you need to do. It's very much a participative decision-making along the way. So in summary, there are these 4 stages. A little bit about, if there's a single page, this gives you a really way of doing it. I think the storming stage is the most difficult, and once you get through that, it's amazing how things begin to move a little more quickly, and the norming and performing become really, you become capable as a group or a team to do that. But it is to understand that you do often go through these stages, and it does take time, and you need to take the time. It isn't about immediately start solving the problem and if you don't get it done in a meeting or two, then it's a failure. It's not that, because teamwork is about longitudinally getting teams to perform, and frankly, it isn't just about one problem, because typically teams that have a single problem have multiple problems, and you want to give them the opportunity to work through the big ones and the small ones. So coming together is the beginning, and keeping together is progress. Working together, achieving results is success. So the key here is not just to work together, it's not just the processes, it's the results that you get. And extraordinary results can be achieved along the way, and I have seen it and been engaged with it. So I just want to, as a form of this, talk briefly before we close out a little bit about cross-functional teams. Well, what we have found as time goes on, interdisciplinary teams and cross-functional teams can often be quite a major undertaking, and often these teams can be significant. In fact, there are some organizations now working where they may have 100 people working on a problem. You can say, well, how do you do that? You don't get 100 people in the room. Well, not necessarily, but you're trying to gain acceptance and the diversity of people from outside the team. Often IT or electronic solutions connected will help people put their ideas in, so that they all, more than just those people in the room, are hearing what might be possible. It is just that you will find that you need to get people involved, maybe from other organizations to give input, and they need to connect with people outside your organization. And really, it is about optimizing continuity of care, for example, because frankly, I think we're beyond the stages where the patient gets admitted and gets discharged, and that's the end of the care. That's the pre-care, and many communities, certainly in Canada, and I'm certain in others, have organized themselves so that you are responsible from really the primary care side to prevent people from, keep them healthy. But once they get in the hospital, is to have the records and everything coming into the hospital. And while they're in the hospital, then when they get discharged, there's continuity going back into the community to the primary caregivers, or however it's to be addressed in your community. But it's continuous, and that's a big team. So you can't have everyone in the room, but you do need to have selected people, and you need to allow others to engage in that. So capabilities of effective teams are these, and certainly in cross-functional teams, they're the same thing. Clarity of outcomes, getting a commitment, having the competence in the room, collaboration, communications, coordinations, and change, being change-oriented. The challenge is really, in this last point, is that change is the only thing that's constant. So some of the things about cross-functional interdisciplinary teams are outlined here. They usually are large and complex tasks. They tend to be more diverse and thus more challenging to put them together and to do some of the things we talked about. But this is the challenges of today, because so much of care is much more complex than it ever was before. They're harder to manage because, frankly, they have such diversity, and often they may not report to you. They are, you've been given an assignment as a leader to bring together these disparate groups. There's more diversity, and often it's used for more leading edge and innovative creative type changes. The role of the leader is really dynamic and requires a very skilled leader, and before you try a really large scale change, you should be trying to work on smaller scales so you learn some of the tools and skills as a leader. But I think one of the things you should remember is that in all of these, you may have to run interference. If you're a leader of a group that's a large-scale change, you may have to be an ambassador. But you do need to create a sense of urgency. And this often, with a sense of urgency in any group, frankly, is that it will increase people's enthusiasm and commitment. I just want to give you some examples as we get right to the end here. These are some that I've run into, and I just thought I'd give you three fairly different ones. The first one is, when I first went into this organization, they really ran in stovepipes. Each of the senior staff kind of did their own thing and ran their own kind of group. And it was difficult for them to understand why the other person's was very important. So what we did is, of course, we did some work on common mission, vision, values, and principles of operation. But we then developed teams, and I did a couple of things. I changed around the portfolio. So, for example, believe it or not, with the help, and so there were sometimes we teamed people up. So, for example, I teamed the senior nurse with finance, and we gave finance a caregiving organization, a care part of the organization. It turned out to be psychiatry. But she was a co-leader with him. She was to help him. And vice versa, we gave her some things related to IT so that she had some influence on it and that they then had to work together. We put their offices together. In fact, we put the offices of the head of medicine, or not the head of medicine, but the chief of staff equivalent, the vice president of medicine, and the nursing and finance person together, because there were some large issues of differences among them. And over time, because they had their offices became physically together, they began working together and having to work across, because they didn't have control of all of their areas, they began having to work together, because again, we had some things which were more functionally separated, and thus not all physicians were reporting through to the physician, but rather through other vice presidents, because of the way that the teams were set up and the way in which work was being done. So it was really, and the team became, excuse me, very dynamic, because they worked tremendously together. And I would say arguably, because I had seen in the past how much difficulty having people aligned in narrow responsibilities, how much difficulty it created. This was extraordinary, and I would say arguably one of my successes at the senior level. The second one I just draw to your attention was, I'll simply say it this way. We had throughout, from the beginning of the patient arriving for, let's say, surgery till they left, we mapped the process, and it was 150 steps. Well, 150 steps means lots of handoffs, lots of asking the patient the same questions, etc. And over a period of about a year, the team ultimately came up with 50 steps instead of 150. And I can tell you, the patients were happier and much more satisfied, as were the staff, because they began to understand the roles across it. The third one is where I worked and was responsible for all of the services in the community, as well as within a multi-hospital organization. And that large, it was a $2.5 billion, $3 billion operation. The goal here was to try to help them understand how they were frustrating each other by, this was early on when I first took it over. And one of the things they found was we had lots of patients, over 150 patients, who were long-term care waiting placement. So we worked through that, and what I found is that they were each pointing to each other as to what the problems were. So what we did is moved some of the people who were the social workers and nurses who were in the hospital into the community, and vice versa, some of the community people into the hospital, to better understand the issues and see if they could help each other achieve a more efficient and effective way of serving the patients and getting them out of the hospital. Because first of all, it was inappropriate for them to be in the hospital. Well, I'll give you one example. One thing that was found that became obvious, that was just assumed, is that the social worker was given 11 days in the hospitals to see the patient once they were ready for discharge. Well, there was no reason. And secondly, that the care was being transferred in the community to 2 or 3 or 4 people before they actually were being assessed for placement. So the two were really confounding the problems. They worked through that, and amazing, I think they could then within 3 days from the date of, in fact, they were getting ahead, knowing that a day ahead when they would know the discharge, so they were able to do it and probably cut it down to about 2 days. So what cross-functional teams, really important, it's about communications, and I just use this as an example. In this last example I use, it's between the hospital and the community, the physicians, home care, actually long-term care and others, but the overwhelming majority of untoward events involve communication failure. The number of misunderstandings, the number of mistakes being made were extremely significant when we had poor communications, and we were now under one organization, and not that that is the only way of solving this, but it certainly helped, and people began getting into what I call the same movie. So I just mentioned that in Canada and other places, the accreditation has adopted standards about information at interface points. This communications consistently is the problem. I have found people are repeatedly asking the patients at every stage the same information and moving that. Of course, there's ways of doing that electronically, as well as by the way in which information moves from one caregiver or groups of caregivers to another, and that they somehow form cross-functional teams to make it more effective. Do effective teams make a difference? Better communications, improved coordination and collaboration, increased capability to achieve goals, and make change. Really, the goal here is to improve quality and safety of patients. And this, I think, I can honestly say that of all my experiences, this is one of the most important things that I've seen, and I think people have been delighted with, is that it has improved the quality and safety of patients. So a final thought is we are on a journey that will take enormous efforts to change. It is clear that improvement in patient safety and quality will take time, but the time for change is now. Our patients, residents, families, and communities depend on providers to work as teams to achieve improved care and services. It's an assumption that I think people are now demanding. So there's some references. There are others. This is just a selected some of which I did look at some others, but these certainly will help you. And then finally, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for this brilliant presentation. And we already have a couple of questions. And the first one is from Sebastian. He's asking, what is your perspective of team member roles based on Belbin's theory of strengths finders? Do you believe that individuals within a team should endeavor to develop identified strengths or mitigate weaknesses?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, you want to take to the team the strengths that you have. In other words, if you are a contributor in a certain way, I think that's exactly what you do. You do, though, also want to try to help people become better at what they do. So where there are weaknesses in an individual, try, and the team as a whole, working to how do you strengthen those. So you're right on. And it's a good question. I mean, it is a balance. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's actually doing both. And I would encourage you to develop skills that or exercises, frankly, with the team that allows people to, in fact, if someone is strong in something, they can even maybe teach some of the dimensions, whether it's how care is delivered or whether it's a skill on problem solving that someone is very good at and that someone else may be weak at. But you do need to try to draw from the group.
Perfect, thank you. The next one is from Patricia McKernan, and she is wondering, can you suggest any tools or instruments for assessing team functioning?
Yeah, I would use some of the human synergistics work. You'll find that on the website, and I don't know whether I referenced that. I'm just looking at if I have it and you want it, send it to Juliana and I will send you directly. But it is on the website. There's lots of work on it, and I think Human Synergistics has done a lot of work on individual. We've done it. I did a review twice on the organization using Human Synergistics, but we've also used it in teams to help them understand what they're bringing to it in the balance and why they may be being challenged in a certain way, and then you can work on the strengths you can build on the strengths of the group and or individuals, and also at the same time challenge the weaknesses and be sure that you're rebalancing the organization so that it's a much more effective organization. That is, the team is more effective in what it does. But if you want, I can send you that through Juliana.
That's perfect. You can send it to me, and I will forward that to Patricia.
Okay.
And the next question, it has been argued that leaders are born and not made. Can leadership be taught?
100%. I think that, regrettably, there is that view. I think that you give me the right people, I don't mean to say that some people don't want to lead, and we can talk about that more, but generally, in my lifetime, the number of people you can teach leadership skills to, and there's lots of work that's been done on this. In fact, again, go to Kouzes and Posner. They will tell you, I mean, straight out, that, again, I'm just going to see if I have Kouzes and Posner down here. The Leadership Challenge, that book will give you really a lot to understand that leaders are made, they're not born, and you can do it. And by teaching them those 5 attributes, they've done tremendous work. I can't say enough for Kouzes and Posner's work. I think of all, there are other people who've done work in leadership, but this group have studied it as well as anyone, and I would encourage you to look at that, and you will realize after reading it, yes, they can be taught how to be good leaders.
Thank you, Phil. The next question is from Kalada Richard. Talking about cross-functional teams involving several organizations, how can we resolve the problem of who is to take the leadership role?
Well, that varies. I think when you have teams, I think it's sometimes best not to look at the hospital as the leadership. You've got to think about what is the goal here and what is the outcome you're looking for. If it, for example, is to put people back in long-term care, let's say that you're having trouble putting them into long-term care facilities or into home care, it would be better to have long-term care and home care lead the process and that the hospital contribute its expertise to them. Sometimes you look at co-leadership. That can work, but sometimes that's difficult too. But it really, first of all, you can also look at a third party, if I may, which is a good facilitator, rather than someone who's in either of the camps. Bring in somebody who's more neutral, especially if you're having lots of tension between the two groups. So you want someone who will lead without an agenda. But not always has to be that way. Good leaders understand that it's not all about the organization from which you come, but it's getting everyone to work together. And the more we understand that, the more we can get people to work together, communicate better, help each other solve the problems, and keep in mind the focus of our goal, which is either the client or patient being more appropriately served. I can tell you that in the organizations like I've worked in, where we've had all of the community resources and the hospitals all in one, it still was a big challenge because people really want to own their part of it. Well, we don't want them not to own it, but we want them to begin to understand the interfaces and the importance of good communication, good handoffs of the patient from one to the other, and how much more can be done for the patient if we are wise in doing it. So yes, I think you can go from, my bias is not always to go from the hospital, but from the community to have the leadership.
Thank you, Phil. And the next question, what is the most significant challenge that you have come across in building a team?
Well, well, one of mine has been, a long story short, is that I was asked to become a CEO of a region. And at that time, not all the hospitals were in it, particularly the largest academic hospital in that city. And it was a large city with arguably one of the largest hospitals in Canada. And 2 days before I was to walk in, the government decided to merge that hospital into the organization as well. Well, and they had to let the well-regarded and good CEO of that organization go. Well, I can tell you that wasn't the most exciting first meeting to go into. And I had to build a team with, starting from what was not a very happy group of people, because they were loyal and also thought they had a good leader, and they did. So I had to work through that, and we got over it. But you've got to take the time to reestablish, and in that case it was the most highly sensitive and difficult building. And it was the same thing across because all of a sudden, where we had 2 or 3 hospitals in the region, we suddenly had 13 hospitals in the region. And I had to build all of that up, and I can tell you it's very complex, as well as the community services had to be integrated. But it's just one thing at a time, and you have to get some good people around you who can work with you and have common goals and common objectives and common principles of operation. You have to be highly principled, and people have to understand that in order to do this well, you have to get people aligned, and they agree on the principles that you're going to work under. Just for a moment, to digress, I mean, if anyone is interested in looking at the VA system in the United States and how Ken Kaiser put that together, that's an example of even bigger than anything I was working on. But he was able to achieve, and I obviously, if I may, stole some of his ideas of how you build organizations that are very complex, but it's built on the basis of good, sound values and principles to begin with, and then, of course, selecting the right people to do the work.
Thank you, Phil. And the last question that we have so far, what would you say are the key leadership qualities to achieve success?
Well, there were the 5 that Kouzes and Posner have mentioned, and I would refer back to those to you. I mean, for example, creating a shared vision is extremely important. I mean, a lot of people underestimate that, but it is on the basis of strong principles. It is about having the right people in place, but it's also having the right core elements of values and principles, what we call principle-centered leadership. So the shared vision is number one. That you model the way, that people can look to you, and you can certainly, you're consistent. You do live those values and principles. That you challenge the processes, and challenging doesn't mean you confront. It is you with the staff, look at the processes that are there and look at ways of making higher order improvements through challenging the process. Enabling others to act, and that is that you're not going to do it alone. You must get a team of people, and they must get teams of people to be able to get things done. And they all must understand the goals you have, i.e. whether it's improved patient care or safety, but more concrete goals and objectives than just those, but how are you going to do that? And finally, encourage the heart. You can't underestimate that people must believe that what they're doing is right, and that you're reinforcing the work that they do. Those 5 bases, again, of Kouzes and Posner's work really has been sort of the linchpin for me on how to get things done.
Thank you so much, Phil. Just to remind everybody that the recording of this webinar will be available on ISQua website within 24 hours, so please pass the information to anybody who might benefit from this webinar. I would like to express huge thanks to Phil for this absolutely interesting, insightful, and very informative presentation, and also to all attendees who found the time to tune in today. Have a good day and goodbye to all.